Hello guys, welcome to Start Russia, the channel where I share the best tips about Russia, its language, culture, business, tourism and many other things. And today I'm having a wonderful guest. His name is Robin. And Robin, where are you from?
I'm from England, from the middle of England.
And Robin is in Russia for the first time. How many days have you spent here?
I had 3 days in Moscow, 3 days on a boat going to a small city called Mishkin, and now we have 3 days in Saint Petersburg.
I would like to ask, what were your impressions and expectations about Russia before you came here for the first time?
To be honest, I was really a bit scared to come to Russia because my ideas must have been in my head from 20 or 30 years ago of how Russia would be, and everything would be grey and the people would be grey. I didn't know what to expect, but what I found was completely different to what I expected.
Okay, and what you found? Can you tell us more details about that?
Well, the first 3 days I spent in Moscow, and wow, one of the most amazing days I had was the day we went to see the metro stations in Moscow. Everybody has to go to see the metro stations in Moscow. They are like palaces and works of art underground. I've seen them in pictures, but to see them in real was completely different and far better than I expected. Then we went to the National Theatre of Dance, of Russian dance, in the evening, and that was a superb show. The girls that danced, I don't know how you call it, but they looked like they were on a conveyor belt at an airport. Their feet didn't move, their heads didn't move, they glided across the theatre stage. It was just incredible. And the male dancers doing, is it Cossack dancing, where they cross their arms?
Yeah.
And wow, they were impressive. So those are my two thoughts I really enjoyed about Moscow.
What 3 best locations you would like to recommend people to visit in Moscow?
Everybody has to go to Red Square and to see the Kremlin. It's bigger and better than I expected. It was pretty awesome. The cable car from Sparrow Hill down to the Luzhniki Stadium,
right.
where the World Cup final was played.
Yeah.
That was a really good trip.
Yep.
Anything else? We spent there 1 day where we went out of the city and saw the countryside 1 hour from the city, and we rode horses and saw the nature. And so I've seen both sides. I saw the city and I saw the countryside. What amazed me most was the welcome we had in the countryside. The welcome from the people we rented the horses from. They invited us to drink local tea. They sat with us. They didn't want to just take our money and run away.
Yeah.
They were genuine, really nice people.
By the way, how was the business center Moscow City? Did you like it?
Oh, way beyond what I expected. It was like Dubai. It was better than New York. It was, how can you explain, like the most up-to-date modern business center facilities anywhere in the world. I didn't expect to see anything like that in Moscow.
Did you have actually any little bit maybe negative impressions about Moscow? If you can mention some, you can be totally open about that, because we are honest channel that tells the truth.
If you come to Moscow, don't expect too much service. Like you sit down in a restaurant, you might wait 20 minutes before they bring you anything. Maybe 20 minutes before they even talk to you. You book into a hotel, don't be surprised if they sit behind the desk and they don't speak to you until you speak to them. It's a different culture, it's a different way of thinking. Maybe there's a little bit the Russian people can learn from other countries about service.
And now, what about Saint Petersburg? How is the city? What do you like in the city?
St. Petersburg is a completely different city to Moscow. First of all, the history, the buildings, the size of it. There are canals everywhere, and the size of the canals and the historic buildings next to those canals is remarkable. I didn't expect it to be so big. I thought the old part would just be in a very small centre and the suburbs would be like every other city. But St. Petersburg, no. It seems to stretch for miles and miles of very historic buildings next to amazing canals.
Again, about St. Petersburg, is it anything here that you didn't like very much?
Well, first of all, before I go on to things that I didn't like, okay, I talked about the history, the historic buildings, the Winter Palace, the Hermitage, the paintings they have in the Hermitage Museum are equal to anywhere in the world. If you want to come to St. Petersburg and spend 1 month here, you will see things in the Hermitage and the architecture of the Hermitage building itself. So you've got two things. You've got the architecture and the history of the building, but you've also got the art inside that you can see as well. Apart from that, the other thing that really impressed me is the art. Everybody's into books, music. Even on the street, we saw some amazing musicians just playing on the street. Last night we went to a book club at 11 o'clock at night, and it was full. People are buying books at 11 o'clock at night. I think this is a city of culture. Negative parts of St. Petersburg, not too many. It's busier than I expected. So if you come here, unfortunately it's becoming more and more popular. So there are more and more people coming here.
But it's fortunately for us.
Fortunate for you, but makes it not so nice for tourists. If I was the only tourist here, it would have been better. And the pollution from the traffic is a little bit difficult to deal with. I was surprised how much pollution. So maybe the Russian government has something to learn, and maybe, like we've done in London, make the centre of the city into a low emission zone. Start charging cars that want to produce pollution, start charging them, or maybe introduce electric cars more. I think Russia's maybe 10 years behind on electric cars and pollution in cities.
But this, I have to mention that this is a European point of view from a person from the UK, because if I just share my experience, when my Chinese friends come here, the first thing they say about Moscow, about St. Petersburg, both, they say, wow, how clean it is. The sky is blue. We finally see blue sky. Some of them have never seen any sky, blue sky in their life.
I've never been to China, so I don't know. All I can do is compare it to cities in the UK.
Yeah, exactly, right. And same what people say from India. And you also mentioned that the city is pretty clean.
The streets get washed. They have special machines at night washing the streets. So from the point of view of cleanliness of the streets and the pavements, or sidewalks if you're American, is pretty good. Well, no, better than pretty good. The only negative, as I said, was the pollution, the emissions from the cars.
What about the food? How do you like the food in Russia?
The food has been interesting because I've tried very traditional Russian cuisine, and then I've tried cuisine like the restaurant we're in now, which is a fusion of Russian cuisine but with a European style. So they've taken the best of Russian cuisine and they've mixed it with European style, and that surprised me how good the quality has been. Okay, we've had some meals that they tried to mix and make a fusion and it didn't quite work, but they're trying. I think maybe 2-3 more years they will have caught up with the rest of the world, and some of the best food in the world where you fuse Russian ingredients, Russian cuisine with European thinking, is going to be amazing.
And what is your observation about people? Let's compare people in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and countryside.
Well, all the guys out there, if you're looking for a beautiful Russian woman, come to St. Petersburg. They're totally different. It's 4 hours on the train, but the difference between the beautiful girls in Moscow and the beautiful girls in St. Petersburg, there's no comparison. So skip Moscow, just come straight to St. Petersburg.
How girls look like in St. Petersburg? What do you mean?
Elegant. They have an attitude. They're taller. Maybe they're more from Northern Europe, from Finland, from Scandinavian countries. There's more Scandinavian family history in the girls in St. Petersburg. In Moscow, it's slightly different.
And what about people's attitude? If you compare Moscow, St. Petersburg, and countryside, the way they talk, behave.
I find pretty much in St. Petersburg and in Moscow they were equal. I was surprised how friendly they were. I don't speak many words of Russian at all, but if I needed some help, even with sign language, take an example, yesterday I was in the restaurant, it was pouring with rain, I needed to buy some cigarettes. It was so wet, like it would, to go outside to buy a packet of cigarettes would have been like standing in a shower. We asked the waiter where the nearest cigarette shop was. What did he do?
He gave you a cigarette.
That's a perfect example about everyone in Russia.
Robin, what was your biggest concern before you came to Russia?
To be honest, I was a little bit scared about safety. I wasn't sure as a tourist how safe it would be. My first impressions were maybe in Russia you had to take more care, it was a little bit less safe than the UK, but oh my goodness, it's nothing like I expected. So if you want to compare London to Moscow or St. Petersburg, have no fears whatsoever. It's much safer in Moscow and St. Petersburg than it ever is in London. Really.
Robin, can you please compare Russia to the UK?
Wow, there's a lot of things to compare, but let's start with architecture. There are some amazing places and some amazing buildings and sites to see in the UK, but I was surprised everywhere in Russia, in the cities, in the countryside, there's something different. And is it cathedrals you call them, or churches? They are spectacular, and there are so many of them. You could spend a year and still not see all the churches that are here, and inside they are incredible. Other differences and comparisons, taxis. They are so cheap here. Wow, you can afford to take a taxi wherever you want. Wine. If you want to drink wine, it's actually quite difficult to buy Russian wine. If my advice is to search out Russian wine.
Oh, did you like Russian wine?
Very, very good. So if Russians are drinking wine from other countries, they need to learn about their own wine and drink more of their own wine and not import it from Chile or Spain or Italy, because the quality of the wine here, the Russian wine, is excellent.
I really trust Robin on this because he's a wine expert.
You think I drink too much wine?
No, I just say that you know wine really well.
I keep practicing and I keep trying. It's a good excuse. Am I wine tasting or am I drinking too much wine?
Yeah, and what about comparison of people from Russia and the UK? What are the similarities and differences?
I've already said about the waiter that gave me a cigarette in a restaurant. And we saw those amazing street performers, the musicians on the street.
Yeah.
And within 2 seconds, somebody Russian guy realized I was from the UK, and he wanted to talk to me. He wanted to tell me how amazing the bands were. He wanted to find out more about the UK. His English was amazing, but he'd never been there, and he was really interested, really friendly, great. And everywhere I've gone, I've found the same attitude.
So you didn't feel any negative attitude from Russian people because you are from the UK, or basically you are a foreigner here?
Totally the opposite. I'm going home tomorrow, and so far, after 9 days, I've had the most incredible, the most amazing experience, well beyond anything I could have imagined.
What if you could give some recommendations to other people who are going to travel to Russia for the first time? What would you advise them?
Don't be worried, don't be scared. The people here are amazing, but if you do like wine, don't buy it in a restaurant, because wine in a restaurant is very expensive. So drink a bottle of wine before you go for dinner, and drink water when you're having dinner.
And when they travel, do you think it's better to come as a group, as a part of big group of tourists, or individually? What is the best way to explore Russia?
Well, I've been really lucky because I've had the best guide in the world. I've seen the tours, the big tour buses. You're not experiencing the real Russia. You're being herded around like sheep, and you don't experience the real Russia. But I think opposite, that if you tried to do it totally by yourself, again, it would be much more difficult. So I found the middle ground. You've been the most amazing host I've ever had. You've shown me everything. So if you can find someone like Yulia to show you around, that's the best solution in the world.
Thank you. I didn't expect you would say it. Thank you, Robin.
You're very, very welcome. And thank you for everything you've done.
Thanks to you. Thank you for this interview. It was really great talking to you, and seriously, it was amazing to spend this time with you in Russia and to see how you explore this country, how you enjoy, how you have fun, and how you open your eyes on many new things.
Exactly. That's exactly the words I was going to use. My eyes have been opened. I would recommend everyone, they must come.
Thank you, Robin. See you again in Russia.
I hope so.
Dear friends, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it same way as I did. And let's discuss in comments what things do you agree or not agree with what Robin said. Subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and like this video.